Okay, so folks, we have now hit 3 o'clock, top of the hour. Let me just welcome everyone on to this this afternoon's session in the I Am Lucian webinar series. Wow, boy, where has the time gone? Because this is now webinar number 7 that we're into. And over the last 2 webinars, we have delved a little bit deeper beyond what I would consider a little bit more of the esoterical, and really gotten down into the whole idea of economics, value. What do we do that will take our economy forward? What can we do that will make better for all of us? And you'll probably recall that 2 webinars ago, we started out with tourism. A tourism entrepreneur and the Minister of Tourism, looking at the economics there. Then coming forward from that, on our last episode, we had Adrian Auger on and Richard Sutherland as a banker. And very deep, the conversation got very deep, very meaningful, very pointed. And so much so that coming out of that session, John, who is on with us this evening on this session, reached out to me and thought, wow, really great session, really great showing. How can I get involved? Here are some things that I'm looking at. And John started speaking to me about blockchain and blockchain technology. For my photography, blockchain is dear at heart to me. I am particularly interested in NFTs and how I can tie that into my photography, and a couple of other things along those lines. So it was an absolute no-brainer, in fact, a delight having John's outreach. And as we started talking and the ideas that John was sharing, it was just like, oh my God, this is what I have always been after in putting this series out in terms of the value of Saint Lucians living abroad, Saint Lucians in the diaspora, the way that those folks, you folks must feel, because I feel that very often by being abroad, you gain a nostalgia and an awareness and a passion and a love for Saint Lucia, more so than when you were at home, maybe because, you're suddenly now really aware of both the challenges, but also the beauty of back home. So this was an amazing opportunity to have John come in and from the heart, share thoughts, insights, etc. And when he started speaking to me about blockchain and marrying it with the credit union, and I was just like, oh my God, what amazing possibilities. And so much so that fired up some of what I shared in my email this morning, just in terms of the point forms of things that we can do, things that can come out of this. So I am hoping and looking forward to coming out of today's session that we really have beautiful dialogue, open discussion, and also that this does not serve as just another talk shop, but that we can come away from today's session with some action points as to what we believe we see as being able to move the needle forward for us as St. Lucians and for St. Lucia in general in the positive and meaningful way that we all would like to see it move. So with that little bit of a preamble, let me just share some insights into John Jacques, who is on, and Zephrin Francis. In fact, when John said to me, I invited him to John, who would you like to bring on that would really move this conversation forward? And when he said to me, Zephrin Francis, I went, oh, Donnie's brother, and it's nice, I think, for us recognizing persons who are here and persons who are getting involved and really having this great sense of us moving the needle. So with that said, let me just share a little bit of background on these two gentlemen. Some of you would probably know of already, and some of it might be new to you, but again, it's all good. So, John Maxwell Jacques, of Advanced Global Blockchain Technology, Saint Lucia. John is an entrepreneur with over 25 years of business experience. He serves as the managing director for the consulting group Advanced Global Coaching and Consulting, based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his area of specialization, rather his areas of specialization include, but are not limited to, strategic marketing and business development, financial technologies, collaborative coaching, SMEs and government policy development. John is originally from Saint Lucia, Marcia to be exact, and he desires to use his skills, talents, and abilities towards sustainable development strategies that will benefit Saint Lucia. Some of the areas of discussion that John would like to take on today, in fact, will take on today, include, and I guess could expand beyond, blockchain technology and the benefits to Saint Lucia's long-term development. And this can then be broken down into subtopics of blockchain technology and the value of it in terms of blockchain in healthcare, blockchain in tourism, blockchain in finance, blockchain in agriculture. And again, this is just to name a few. So overall, where John seeks to take this, to take us down the road of really considering, realizing, and being aware of, and looking to move into blockchain as our future. And then, of course, there's Zephrin E Francis, or Zeph, as many of us would affectionately know him. Zephrin is a financial and management consultant. He's a former government official, having been assigned to the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Communication and Works, the Ministry of Finance and Planning, in the Treasury Department specifically. And this is just to list a few of the postings that Zeph has found himself taking on and serving in. Mr. Francis is a former president of the Saint Lucia Cooperative Credit Union, now the Jano Credit Union. And in these roles as president, he's also been serving as director. And also the Saint Lucia Cooperative Credit Union League, which is the cooperative's umbrella organization. Zeph has also served as treasurer of the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, which is the regional organization representing credit unions, and he has been involved in the regional financial sector for well over 30 years. So folks, what you can appreciate is that we've got a wealth of expertise with us this afternoon, and I really look forward to us having engaging discourse, dialogue, and like I shared, action points coming out of today's session. So with that said, I would like to invite first John to just share some thoughts and insights, and then we will follow up with Zeph. And as all of this is happening, I just invite folks, as always, to post in the Q&A any questions, thoughts, comments, etc. that you may have, and then I will pick them up and just read them out so that we have an overview of them, and invite panelists to comment on them just as we go with the flow like we normally do. So with that said, John, the stage is all yours. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate the introduction. I will spare the rest of your audience any more information about myself. And but I do want to bring a little anecdote consistent with the theme, I am Lucian. I think my, I guess, recognition of patriotism as it relates to Saint Lucia came about during my stint at the Methodist School in Castries. And it was in Ms. Jabati's class that we had a student teacher from Dennery who came for that time and talked to us about this notion called brain drain. And that stuck with me from that point on, as well as another experience I had in M Jacques' class, in that when we planted the pea in the cup with the tissue paper. Remember that from back in the day? And of course, now I'm vegan, so I'm not sure if that's an influence. I'm not sure if that was the complete influence, but nevertheless, that's my contribution. But I recall, when my family, my dad made a decision for me to come to the United States when I was 15 years old. I was very much against that because I really did not want to leave my country. At the time, I was at Compre, Form 3 at the time, and pretty much, again, going back to that recollection component, learning how to use a lathe in machine class, or learning Shakespeare in one of the little wooden building shacks that were built on the side there. Those are the kind of memories that come to mind when I think about my Saint Lucianness. And years later, and many moons after that, I come back full circle, working for a company by the name of GTEC Corporation out in Asia, and developing a platform for lottery systems in the various countries. And in particular, we did a proposal, I did a proposal for a state out in India called Punjab. And that framework was utilized for the early lottery system that we had in the Caribbean. I was excited about that because I wanted an opportunity, I thought at the time, to be able to return home and, again, do what I'm endeavoring to do now, and that is to bring technology and knowledge to our country, whereby we can see some market improvements. So here it is many years later, and we find ourselves in a very interesting place. A lot of people use the terminology getting back to normal. I'm not quite sure what that is. Nevertheless, I think we should learn lessons whenever we encounter adversity. And no doubt the COVID pandemic can be considered an adversity. And so we have to come out of this. So we ought to have been developing methods and policies that will allow for us to come out of this situation as a much stronger country and a much stronger economy. To that end, a group of us have been engaging various individuals in St. Lucia, whether it's in government or in private sector, regarding our technological infrastructure, which is unfortunately very lacking. As I will endeavor to discuss today, which is around blockchain technology. And you think of blockchain technology in this way, it's sort of if you had to choose, if you were one of the three little pigs and you had now choosing which kind of building material that you would use, blockchain technology will represent the brick house, okay? And what we're using right now may be considered the stick house. It may take a while to get blown down, but it will eventually get blown down. And the reality is that we need something far more robust in its place, and this is where it comes in. Now, blockchain technology in of itself, it may be new to some of your audience members. However, this technology has been around for over 20 years now. It has become far more popular in the last 15 years as it has branched into other areas of our different sectors, and of course, in the last 10 years has really been focused on the financial technologies piece of things. And the reason for that is the nature of the blockchain space, right? So I want to share some of my screens with you. I know as Saint Lucians, we like to get name brand stuff. So let me share some name brand stuff with you. So this is from the IBM website, and in there they're discussing blockchain technology. Are you able to see this? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the writing. Excellent. All right, so I want to focus first on the first paragraph, which kind of tells you what the story is going, and that's sort of how we learn to read. So blockchain for business uses a shared and immutable ledger that can only be accessed by members with permission. Muy importante. Network members control what information each organization or member may see and what actions each can take. Blockchain is sometimes called trustless network, not because the partners don't trust each other, but because they don't have to. The technology in and of itself corrects issues of trust. And I want to focus on this word right here, immutable. And let's go to a different screen here. And the dictionary, just Googling it, describes immutable as unchanging over time or unable to change. And this is important because when we think about blockchain within our financial services sector, you certainly want to have a technology that people cannot go in and fudge with it. Fair enough? And that we won't have individuals, it takes away the opportunity for people to become creative in terms of how they dispense with their duties around financial services and financial services delivery. And so if we're concerned about having safe and secure financial transactions well into the future, it just makes sense that we build it on a platform that is, in fact, immutable. Now, you alluded to the fact that blockchain is part of a number of different industries. And again, staying with IBM's website, you can see other areas where blockchain has and will continue to have an influence, and that is within a myriad of places, whether it's government, automotive, gas, manufacturing, etc. My focus today is really going to be on the banking and financial sector, because as we know, without money, we can't do many things, fair enough? So I want to share a different screen with you, and this is a presentation that let's start there. Bear with me a moment, please. All right, can you see my screen now? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kirk. All right, so our focus is going to be on blockchain technology within the credit union space and what that looks like. So I'm going to show you a quick video, about 5 minutes long. I'm going to try to keep to my time there, but I want to make sure you get an understanding of how the world views blockchain. And it's important because although, we may exclaim sometimes that that's new to us, what have you, understand the rest of the world is moving forward. We can choose to keep up or we can choose not to. What I contend is that we choose to keep up, right? So let's get into that here. Oops, sorry. Technical difficulties, my apologies for that. What's going on with that? But nevertheless, let's move on. It seems to be we having some technical issues. The point I want to make is two things. One is the ECCB, by way of our governor, Mr. Timothy Antoine, in his wisdom, made a decision to build our digital dollar on the blockchain. Now, I'm not sure to what extent or what the committee meeting was around that, but we have to give him credit for the fact that he took a view that the technology that we need to utilize within the ECCB is blockchain technology, because like me, he recognized the immutable component of blockchain technology and chose to build our digital dollar on the same. Now, Saint Lucia being one of the participants in the pilot project, I believe it's important for us to take advantage of that. We do know, sometimes we have to, it seems like we have to ask permission before we do things or wait for something to happen before we engage with it. This green light has already been given. Incidentally, we began this conversation back in 2019. And at that time, had we employed this technology, we would have been ahead of the EU. Now, keep that in mind, because these are the folks who keep blacklisting our countries, right, for financial services reason. However, if we had in place the technology that far outweighed their own, it'd be a very different conversation, right? As we speak to things such as correspondent banking, we know how that works, but I give you the way I phrase it is sort of like a nanny banking situation, whereby you think of, as a parent, you hire a nanny so that way the kids don't play with matches and burn the house down. But eventually the kids grow up and you're no longer worried about them burning the house down or playing with matches for that matter, but rather the situation that exists currently with our banking system is that we continue to be in the nanny banking situation where the first world banks, for lack of a better term, look at us as troubled, right? And to be honest, in some ways it is kind of for good reason, because we do engage in some practices that may not be, that may tarnish their books, and they understand that. So what we're submitting, rather than continue to be in that uncomfortable situation, having to ask permission every time as a business owner you want to conduct business overseas with the manufacturer in China or the United States or whatever, you can now conduct these processes more directly with less intermediary interference and, of course, less fees, right? Which is another component of what the blockchain technology within the credit union space does. We think about the fact that we send money back, back home anyway, through MoneyGram and Western Union. We pay a fee anywhere from $9.95 to, I think, $14.95 in some cases, depends on the denomination. And we could create a mechanism through our financial services sector to facilitate the transfer or the retention of money to Saint Lucia, and costing us less to send the money. The fees will be retained in the credit union, which can then be used to develop our country. Likewise, if we think about having a national payment process in something like Visa or MasterCard, but within our own ecosystem, that is in our country, whereby all transactions, business transactions conducted within St. Lucia is trafficked on the platform developed by the credit unions for the purpose of commercial processing, we're saving our businesses millions of dollars per month and millions of dollars per year in an aggregate situation. And again, I can't imagine of any business who would say, no, I'd rather not save money in fees. I just want to be paying fees. That's just not a thing, right? And of course, that money can then be used to further expand their own development, hire new people, provide new services, upgrade their own technologies. These are spaces of opportunity of growth that can be afforded if we come together, collaborate, and create a system that is robust, secure, and very importantly, immutable. Now, what we have done in terms of our conversation in expressing this is partnering with an organization that will be able to facilitate the building of this component for us, unique to us. And although it's unique to St. Lucia, it's not unique to the Caribbean, right? Many of us are on the Eastern Caribbean dollar, and many of us have a similar type of banking infrastructure, wherein our banking traffic is not done in-house, it's done outside of our country in a private entity. Granted, yes, this has worked for us well, but I cannot tell you how troublesome that is looking at it from the outside in, right? And that's why I spoke to the issue of a nanny banking situation, in that it does look like, there are holes in that, right? And as an investor, as a legitimate investor, if you're coming into a system where, there are holes or potential challenges, you're less likely to be all in. Or there may be some rigid sort of contingency that you want to put in there. Understandably, you want to protect your assets, right? So if we take away those sort of dubious thinking around how we deal with financing in our country by creating a sound system that anybody in the world knows of blockchain, knows the fact that it is secure, knows the fact that it's immutable, that's where that trust comes back in. I don't care whether you're in St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, if you're using blockchain technology to conduct your transactions, especially in the area of financing, I can trust the transaction. I may not trust you, may not like you, or anything to that effect. It's about the principle, not the personality. But when we're using a technology that is immutable, we can trust the transactions to be as is. And that's where we ought to be going forward. The bottom line is in a broader scheme, as I identified those other areas that blockchain can be part of, I believe in terms of engaging with the government, we ought to be looking at this as part of our digitization process. It's, again, the three little pig story. Why build on the stick house when we can build with the brick house, right? And so we need to be migrating in that direction, which then elevates our entire economy in the various sectors in a space that, quite frankly, will be unmatched anywhere in the region, which makes us a very attractive place to invest, and certainly a very attractive place for us to do business, period. And also, which is very significant, the technology can also be leased to other areas. So whereas the credit unions, say, for example, they have their payment process and network, they can lease that technology to St. Vincent, to Grenada, to Dominica, etc. And just like they're paying fees right now to Visa and MasterCard, they themselves in turn will be receiving the fees for usage of their technology, which creates more capital in our country for development in a myriad of areas. And why is the credit union so important? Well, how many banks do you know that's in south of us? or in Choiseul or in Labrie, right? So the idea is our credit unions are in every segment of our country, and therefore the reach is there where development is necessary. And this prevents, I would think, when done strategically, prevents migration into the cities, keeps development in different areas, and elevate the communities without having everyone come to one place, which we can talk about what the impact of that could be. So in essence, this is where we fall as far as the technology is concerned. Now, how do we get there, right? So many will say, oh, Gasas, are you ready for that, Jota? That type of thing. For me, I get the hairs in the back of my neck stand up when I hear that. But what we've also introduced is a data science institute whereby we can train our young people, or young at heart, right, for that matter, on these technologies. And we introduced the Data Science Institute a while ago. And the focus was to train folks in the area of blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the like. These are the advanced tech components, not to have to build a website or those kinds of things. And that's something that's already prevalent. And this is, again, STIX technology. So having the Data Science Institute in Saint Lucia, training our people, we now have a cadre of individuals which are highly skilled to support the growing of this technology within the various sectors of our economy. And thus, again, giving them also the latitude to then export their skill set to neighboring islands and neighboring countries, and also provide services in the United States as well. Incidentally, which is our biggest market for blockchain technology in the next 3 to 5 years, because right now we're looking at stats where 59% of our top executives in the United States are not familiar with blockchain, right? So they have to, obviously, because that's the trajectory where things are going. And what they will need is people to do that for them. And as we know, anything about United States businesses is that we love to outsource. So if that is the case, why not, as Saint Lucian, as an economy, develop a cadre of highly skilled individuals to provide that service to those folks? Amen.
Okay, so John, thank you. The 15 minutes or so had a little bit of long pants, but the truth is what you were sharing, I think, was just so worth getting that information out there that I couldn't have considered having you pause anywhere in there. And I know that what you have shared is just the tightest of synopses, but I'm also expecting that the conversation will expand, especially after Zeph comes in and speaks about credit union, and we then look at how the two can be married, and even going beyond into those other aspects that you were just speaking of, like the outsourcing that is going to come out of North America. And what a boon that could be as we speak to youth unemployment at this point in time. So with that said, Zephrin, let me invite you in to share some thoughts and insights in the conversation as we look to continue the discourse. So all yours, Zeph.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. Well, John, thanks for the intro. I think John actually exposed the technology. But from the credit union perspective, I just want to go before I get directly into the credit union. Blockchain and cryptocurrency, as John said, is not new. I remember we first heard about it in 2009. But I remember when we went to a Caribbean Confederation conference in Trinidad in 2016, we were already moving in that direction of virtual office and all these plans of where we're going. Unfortunately, in the Caribbean, we tend to have that concept. We must wait for somebody else to do it first before we do it, which is unfortunate. Now, marrying that into the credit union, the technology is out there. The thing is, who owns it? Now, the credit union movement have an advantage, and I'm going to use it. Though I have a Caribbean background, and being a Saint Lucian, I know the Saint Lucian because I was head of the movement for a number of years. And then came back and head again, and then again, what John said, we that spend a lot of time overseas, our own local people still believe in the Tikabawe, boutique mentality. So the credit union has a foundation in Saint Lucia, and that's the emphasis. There are 14 credit unions in Saint Lucia, and basically they all facets of the island. You have, and there are two types of credit union. You have the employee-based credit unions, and you have the community-based credit unions. That over the years now is beginning to marry. You had employee-based credit unions are now becoming more of a national, like Cable and Wireless had a credit union. But as we're shrinking and moving, they renamed themselves Workers' Credit Union. They are now almost like a national credit union. You have Labrie, Monrepo, and Choiseul, who are community-based credit union, but looking at themselves more on a national level. Same thing with civil service. Civil service now is an employee-based credit union, but realize that the expansion. So it has grown to take on family members and other utilities. So it's more like what we would call public credit union, no longer civil service credit union. I am emphasizing the point where it works best, especially with the blockchain, rather than even allowing the banking system, because as John said earlier, the banks are in the cities, cannot meet the ordinary person at the community level unless the person comes to the bank. And I'm using here, I'm going to use a model so that some of the people in the audience can understand. Take example, climate change, which is a big issue. There are millions of dollars out there to assist in climate change, either for you to do roofing, solar, all right, or tank, or whatever it is. But somehow our governments in the Caribbean have not use what we have. So 20 million goes into development bank to say they're providing this service. How you expect a guy working on a farm in Labrie or Monrepo or Choiseul to drive to Castries to go to development bank and say, I want $20,000 or $50,000 because I want to put solar panel. He has no history, he has no background. He might be intimidated by entering the office. But here it is, he belongs to Labrie, Monrepo, or Choiseul Credit Union. If the government and the powers be look at it, it would have been best that that money, which is going to achieve a national goal, went down to the community level. So take example, that project, though it's still a government project, but it's handled by the credit union in Labrie because they know their people. There's a foundation. That would have allowed more. So at the end of the day, the bulk of the money ends up staying at the bank because you're not going to get people coming up there looking, even though the interest rate is low, it's a good idea, the project is great. So what I'm trying to emphasize, Kurt, and for your audience is that blockchain cryptocurrency is new, but there are people who are well-trained and who are in the position to understand it, that they now can embrace it and make it available to the ordinary person. Because in truth and in fact, like you said earlier on, from the diaspora, we send money down to Saint Lucia. People go for Western Union, MoneyGram. But if they had a credit union, the money goes to the credit union, they just walk in. You don't have that big mass of people, as you know, during COVID, you understand the problem. I was in Saint Lucia during that time, and it was incredible. Seeing a line start at Western Union, goes down to where Cozy Corner used to be by Duboulet, and come up Bridge Street. So almost making like a complete U, waiting on a line hours before the place actually opened. So what John is saying, that is one way that if you involve the local components, you can meet the needs of the ordinary people. And I think that is where, with John, I think we need to go, is that the technology exists, the entities are there, is how we marry these two to get maximum benefit for the country at the same time meeting the needs of our ordinary people. I think, John, I take a lot of your time, so I just want to emphasize that so that we know where we're going. The other thing too is that I think a lot of people are hesitant about credit unions. Yes, when credit unions started, they were small entities. It was the poor man's bank. But it has grown. The poor man put their money together because it was more about savings, and they borrowed to each other. Today, the credit union landscape has changed. In Saint Lucia, you have over 100,000 people who are members of credit union, and the credit union movement as a whole has over $1 billion. $1 billion. I was in Barbados before I came up to America in April and May, and we were looking at the credit union in Barbados. They have almost 200,000 members, but they have $3 billion in assets. But guess where that money is sitting? In the bank. That money is sitting in the bank because, I like to say, the regulation and everything. Now, people are telling you credit unions are becoming like bank. It is happening because other people are regulating us. When you become big and you become powerful, people begin to look at you and say, hey, let me make sure these fellas are being controlled. So now, what do we do to make sure that we can bring the greatest benefit to the ordinary Saint Lucian? Now, those of us in the diaspora, those of us who have our links back home, is that technology has changed it dramatically. All right, a blockchain, cryptocurrency, Dcash, and I mean, Governor Antoine and me have a close relationship. When Dcash was coming about, we understand. And the central banks get involved. I mean, maybe for your audience, central banks got involved because they realized when cryptocurrency and Bitcoin came about was to bypass central banks. You have one base and everything happens. So the banking system say, hey, these guys are going to leave us out. So let's get into the play because the young people, Generation Z and the new millennium, they're into technology. People like us, maybe some of your members on the platform, we are wondering what's happening, but the young people have become creative. A Saint Lucian now can sell his product to somebody all the way in Germany, operating from Saint Lucia, and don't believe it's not happening now. So even though it's on a small scale, what do you think is going to happen? Our young people are no longer shopping in the MNC or Hobbies or these stores. They're online. And it comes down either through FedEx or one of these facilities. So whether we like it or not, the technology is changing. So we have to adapt. My position, as I spoke to John, and now I think I'm in discussion with you, is that we have a mechanism in Saint Lucia and in the Caribbean, which is the credit unions that we can best utilize, which is already at the grassroots level. So Kurt, I hope I gave a synopsis so when your people come in, they would have an understanding where we're going with this, because I think John has a product which is great. Right now is, where does the marriage works? How do we bring it to the people? And most times is we have to sell it to the people because they want to be skeptic.
Okay, thanks for that, Zeph. Just in listening, well, first off, I want to invite folks in the audience to post any thoughts, comments, questions that you may have. While we wait for some additional feedback to come in, John, a question that comes to mind has to do with efficiency. And can you speak a little bit to, if we were to use blockchain, some of the things that I see that could happen, and I think of what exists in Africa right now, for the unbanked, they have actually moved a lot of the economy at the grassroots level by transactions happening directly off of their phones.
Correct.
Folks are able to receive money, to do business, literally from their telephones, and it has worked amazingly well in Africa.
Right.
I want to ask the question, if something like that were to happen in Saint Lucia, what might we see as some of the savings benefits? And an obvious savings benefit would be the fact that people wouldn't have to leave wherever they live, wherever they're working, to go to the bank. And I can just think of the banks that have closed down in Soufrière. So Soufrière, which, you think Soufrière, Choiseul, maybe even Camrys to a certain extent, because Soufrière could be a basin for those. Suddenly, all of those people now have to go to Vieux Fort to do any banking transaction, if perchance they're not using credit unions.
Right.
So question I'm after is, what amount of leakage might we be speaking to? And while you mightn't have definitive figures, but we can sort of extrapolate as to savings benefits that could be had if we were now to be handling fiscal movement through blockchain, and then it could happen on the phone, as compared to, for instance, going into a bank.
I mean, there's quite a few across the board, notwithstanding the safety of driving on the road. But let's park that for a moment and speak to it. The reality is that you are able to conduct commerce. So if you're a small business person, say you're a coconut vendor, for example, right? Having access to your finances on your phone, you're able to manage your inventory. Right. So now you have a better understanding of how your business flows as far as inputs and outputs is concerned. If you're using a transport van to take your coconuts from the farm to the roadside or whatever, your app can tell you how many miles that you put in, so you can calculate what it costs you per mile in terms of determining what your opportunity cost is for your product, right? So that's one component. What it does there, and this is leakage that you may not have anticipated, but what it does in this regard is that it elevates our literacy as it relates to finances, right? And it also does so not by virtue of a workshop, but by actual tools that you engage with on a daily basis. Furthermore, you're not paying you don't have to worry about leasing a machine if you want to accept credit card payments or cashless system. You can use your telephone to do that by way of a QR code. Very simple, prolific thing that's out there. It can be done securely within the context of your app on your phone to do that. So you're saving fees. You're hopefully saving your life by not driving up and down the road from one city to another. You also having a good inventory management system, which is something that is, we don't usually have a conversation about when we talk to people about becoming entrepreneurs. And so all of this is built in. So you, as an entity, the person, the small business individual, is elevated just by that one factor. And if you think about that now spread over multiple segments, whether it's the fish vendor or it's the person selling okra or floats by the side, all of these individuals, by virtue of having a smartphone, is now able to engage fully in our financial services sector, which is
and John,
just
I can even add,
tremendous.
John, I can even add to that, because I think you're going on the right track. The fish vendor now, or the guy with the coconut, by virtue of his phone, can now go into his credit union account and see what has actually entered in the account, because it's just up to date. I mean, I'm in America, I belong to civil service, which is Journal Credit Union. I can transfer money anywhere I want to because of the fact that they're linked up now. All right, I have a debit card, I go and shop, so I can go online and actually see my account. So by what John is saying, the vendor by the market, he now knows the sale he had for the day. At the end of the day, somebody comes to him and say, I need $800 for payment, and he's only collecting $5 and $2. He don't know how much is added up, but when he goes into that app and look at his credit union account, he knows he has $900. So he can automatically right there and there make a transaction. And that's what John was talking about, the linkage, the leakage. Because that way he knows he doesn't have to go back home. He doesn't have to go and make a phone call. He doesn't have, so it's allowing commerce and financial activities right at your fingertip. That is the advantage. And it turns our people into business people.
Okay, so thanks for that. And I think that those points that have been shared just bring up, make it an ideal time in terms of this question that has come in. How is the population being prepared for this new blockchain technology? John, I think that you might be ideally poised in terms of answering that one.
Is the question, how is the population being
prepared?
Well, they're not being
blockchain technology.
Well, they're not being prepared. That's the problem, number one. And the fact that, like we've shared before, we started this conversation back in 2018, we're definitely not being prepared because we've been disadvantaged. I articulated the fact that our country was one of the pilot countries for the digital dollar rollout. So we've had the information as to why it has not been disseminated or dispersed. It's a question for other people to answer. I do not know. right? I have done my part. We have done our part in terms of engaging with what we believe to have been relevant individuals in authority to be with the responsibility of educating and informing their members and participants in their organizations. Beyond that, what we have done, actually, practical thing that we've done, we did a meet and greet back in 2019, I believe. And even to this day, we still have young folks who are reaching out to us asking, when is this coming to Saint Lucia? When is this coming to Saint Lucia? Which is the sad part, man. For 5 years, we've had to try to keep these young people motivated and excited and interested because they're already in this space, right? There's a group of young people who are already doing trading with each other in Saint Lucia for crypto, for service, etc. So this is already in Saint Lucia among the young people. The problem, unfortunately, and I hate to make it sound like it's an ageist thing, is folks who are, in a certain age or a certain category who they don't want to learn new things, it appears. And unfortunately, because of their choices, it's impacting the rest. So if you question why it's not being done, we have to ask those who are not interested in it, but that's not our responsibility. I'll be honest with you, as a country, we ought not and should not continue to have a few people who choose not to do something hold our entire development hostage. Not when we're losing 44 young men into homicides. That's just not a thing for us to have as a conversation. We need to identify who these individuals are, call them out, and if they can't, just like in the Christian faith, if the brother is stepping out of line, you go to him and confront him directly. If he does not change his ways, you bring him before the assembly. If he does not change his ways after that point, then you kick him out, period. And so we should employ with the same fervor that we went to do our religious walk through Viewfort. Let's apply that same
John, I want to
towards others.
John, I want to add, because I think it's a good question. Why St. Lucia has not been prepared? Because our own people, the people who have an understanding of what is required or what is needed, are not being utilized. Because we understand the technology, and you cannot go to the countryside and sell a technology and the person is going to be skeptic. But the people who have access to it, who knows it, can do it, the credit unions themselves can do the trading for the members, because remember, the credit unions belong to the members. It's not like the bank or a private business. It's your thing. So whether there's only 10 people who understand the technology, the point is you go out now to the general membership and say, here is the best, because people are going to embrace something if they know the benefits of it. They might not know the technology, but the benefits, just like what John was saying earlier, and I elaborated on, the coconut vendor. Which coconut vendor selling coconut by the market have access to an app and can now see his transaction at the end of the day, what it cost him to bring the coconut to the market, what it cost him at the end of the day, his sales at the end of the day, what his margin is, and what he can do tomorrow without actually living by the market and going to the bank or going to a credit union. So, but we will not embrace it unless those who know or understand are prepared to go out there and do the teaching.
So, Zeph and John, okay, so stuff is coming in fast and furious, and I'm loving this. So let me just share a couple of thoughts. Dawn, as always, thanks. For folks who may not have been on before, I've just always thought of Dawn as our links queen, and once again, she hasn't failed. So Dawn has shared a link here, and as always, I will place these links in the replay, in the description for the replay. So Dawn has shared a link where ECCB to issue world's first blockchain-based digital currency. Again, that's in sync with John, a point that you made when you spoke. Dawn has also shared the first Dcash transaction conducted in Saint Lucia, and this dates back to what was this? 2021. So that's sometime last year, and I'm taking it. It could have been March. It was either March or December, because 21/03/12. So the truth is, we have been making some strides, but the strides are not meaningful. And I think that that's what's coming out. And also, as we speak to these matters, because I'm going to come to a couple of other questions that are here, it really is for us to speak to what actions might be taken to move the needle forward. Now, having said that, let me just share a comment that is here. Saint Lucia is not being prepared. Unfortunately, Saint Lucia and Lucians are more reactive rather than proactive. Um, First National Bank with ECCB had a lecture pre-COVID where I warned them that the education could not be PSAs and lectures in English. And here we are, post-COVID, nada. Now here's a beautiful question. Currently, I can move cash between countries and make payments using my Bank of St. Lucia online account outside of any blockchain facility. Grateful for any further clarification on how this is proposed to work.
I'll take that. And thanks for that question. I think it's important to look at two separate things. First of all, yes, individually, we may have some services available, but that's not available to everybody. You feel me? And so if we're going to grow an economy, we ought to be able to include everybody as best as possible. Not everybody in St. Lucia should be able to have a BOSL account or a bank, First National account, or even a credit union account for that matter. And so what the blockchain technology space does, it creates an ecosystem whereby everyone can participate as opposed to, select few or individuals within the know, if you would, right? And it also provides again, from a macro perspective, it demonstrates a solid financial services infrastructure. And that's the key part. That's where we talk about elevating our entire economy as far as growth. That's where we convey trust in our economy and trust in our financial services sector, period. So what blockchain gives us is the immutability component of blockchain. Immutability does not exist currently in the services that has been provided. So yes, you may be able to transact things, absolutely. And some people who have but we have to think about it in a broader sense. We have to think about it in a macro sense, right? And how that's going to impact the entire economy, the entire country. Think about it as the rising tide lifts all boats. That's how it ought to be. Fair enough? Hopefully that's not too,
Yeah, well, and John, I can even add on to it, because what the person who raised the question is saying, it is true. I'm a living proof of it. Because when the ETCB started, it has Bank of St. Lucia, and one credit union, civil service credit union, is in the Dcash market. It was rolled out because of the size of the credit union. A $300 million credit union is just as big as any indigenous bank. So it was both Bank of St. Lucia. So I have that facility currently in America that I have the card, I can transact business, but it's not readily available to the ordinary person. So when I heard somebody say they have that, yes, we understand that. The point is, how could you put that in the hands? Because early on, Kurt, I think you raised the African model. Before, certain people in Nigeria, the rich people, they can do these transactions. But in the countryside, the farmer did not know how to get his product to market, right? Does not know what it, and even in St. Lucia, it can work like John said earlier on, agriculture. We know that there are certain times of the year, there's an overabundance of cucumber, lettuce, or tomatoes. If you have that network where farmers can interact, they know what the market is like, because if you have an oversupply, the price drops. So you might not even meet your operating costs. But if you had that platform, because what blockchain does is not only for the financial sector, it can work, like John said earlier, in agriculture. It's a different platform. So you have a number of platforms that can intertwine. So the issue now is, how do we utilize what we have? Now, finance is the easiest thing to start with because people are very sensitive by money. So it's a way of raising the awareness. But if you come with it and then you're now telling people, a farmer or a fisherman, hey, we have this app or we have this thing that can literally monitor. The only thing is that John said is trust. And that is the thing that we have a problem with, because people will tell you, so by nef salam, they're skeptic. But I'm using an example, and I tell people, they talk about money laundering. You go to the bank now, you withdraw $10,000, which is genuine, it's your money, properly earned, you can account for. But when you left the bank, when you left that bank with that $10,000, what illicit drug or anything you could get involved with, nobody can, because that money is no longer traceable. But if you were in a blockchain or you're in cryptocurrency, every transaction with that $10,000 is monitored. So it might be, now some people are fearful of accountability, but for the sake and benefit of the economy or for country development, it is great to have that kind of system. We know locally now in Saint Lucia, people tell you, you can't get nothing done unless you pass something under the table. Look, this kind of system and accounting and procedure we put in place minimize that, because it would say, well, look, I paid $5 for this thing, but I see the account have $6. Where did that extra dollar went? So these are the things, but I share some of the people in your audience, is that some of us have to take the bull by the horn and start the process. But like you say, who's going to do it?
Okay, so thanks, gentlemen. And leading on from the question of how is the population being prepared for this new blockchain technology, there was a follow-on that this is typical of those in authority who sit back and take no action to move our development forward. The question that comes to mind with this, because absolutely agreed, and I think that for so many of us, it can be frustrating trying to get things done, things that we understand should be a simple matter to effect. And it really seems not just like pulling teeth, but even like trying to pull the molars. So I think that one of the things that we may want to consider and ask ourselves is, what might we be able to do to effect change, to move the needle? And I'm not, while we're speaking today of blockchain, and we're looking at it in large part in terms of financial services, but it goes so much deeper than that. And if I come back, John, you made reference to the idea of health. Just imagine if we had a system in place, and this system could run on blockchain, where when you go to your doctor, your prescription is now sent out to your pharmacy of choice. And it's in a protected environment, again, because of the security that's tied into blockchain. We could have our medical institutions, our health centers, our hospitals, etc., tied in as well through blockchain. And then there would be greater efficiency. Right now, as an example, if one has to do any sort of procedures, you know, like you go to the doctor and you go to do your annual checkup, and you're given this sheet of paper with all of the tests to do, take it to the medical facility. My God, that could be happening right through blockchain, that your information is sent directly to your institution of choice. The information comes back out, a copy is sent to you. It can come straight to your phone or to your computer, and it goes to your doctor as well. It frees up. We could be having a continuation of what happened during COVID, where there was remote medical visitation or medical consultations. So again, I'm just sharing these thoughts, really looking to expand the conversation, because sometimes when we speak of money, you know, folks can be a little bit antsy. Well, I know how the banking system works, but I'm not sure how this will work. But if we really just look at the platform of blockchain and the secure environment and the immutable environment, like John spoke to, that it creates, and now we can start to see the possibilities, and these possibilities redound to tremendous savings, because we're not tied up in traffic, we're not paying for the gas to go to town and come back, or whatever the case may be. So I just thought that I would share those thoughts and now throw the question out to those who are on this session, what do we consider could be some of the things that we do, the things that we call for that speak to the comment that this is typical of those in authority who sit back and take no action to move our development forward. Let us not just accept that, but let us speak to what might we do to move the bar. So just thought that I would throw that out. I look forward to feedback coming in from folks, and again, just to invite John and Zeph, if you've got any further thoughts on that.
Let me just 2 cents. First of all, we have to think of blocks, because I cheated and saw comments regarding the utilization of the space. So blockchain is sort of like the highway, right? And everything else is the cars on the road, right? So we cannot demonstrate blockchain except to show that it is a safe road to travel on, and everything travels on it. So whereas, you can build an app on the blockchain, when you do that depends on the service that you're providing through that application, is resting the security from your end, the security of the network on your end, and the security of your end consumer, if you would. Your example with the healthcare, that's a prime example there, where your privacy is paramount, right? You're not going to just put that on any willy-nilly application on your phone. So you want to know sure that the backend, what supports that application, is an immutable platform, which is the blockchain. So that way, when whether it's your primary service provider in Saint Lucia, anywhere in Saint Lucia, or if you travel to Barbados or somewhere where you're linked eventually, hopefully, they can pull up your medical records and see exactly what you're allergic to, what medications you're taking, the last blood pressure reading, your last blood sugar reading. All of those things are readily available to your service provider in a secure environment, so that way they can provide you with the best possible care and treatment at that facility. So blockchain is really the highway on which these things travel, and not just not just an application in and of itself, if that makes sense.
And John, you are so right. And for the audience and the people you have, it is what John is speaking about, and Kurt you raised, is not new. I mean, in America, I am now in Texas. When I came out of Brooklyn, I wanted something done. All I did was go in and just tell them, I never showed up in person, just said, look, I am moving to Texas. Where are the pharmacies closest in San Antonio that I can get this thing? The system brings it up, and all I do is go and collect it. So whoever the doctor is in San Antonio, or wherever it is, he already has a bag. He didn't have it before, but as soon as he brings up my name, that data is up. But John said it's true. It has to be secured. Medical record is something where we don't take chances with. But the same thing happened with the airline. I mean, now when I travel through America, I hardly see any teller or anybody. You go to a kiosk, everything, I get my tag for my bag. My credit card goes in. They charge me if I have an extra bag. They tell me the weight. I go and I just put it on a belt. When I get to where I'm going, it's there. They hardly have any. So it's not nothing new we're talking about. It's there. Can we use it to the advantage? And the thing is that if you're not in front, somebody else is going to bring that product for you and they're going to sell it. It's going to be theirs. So now you pay a fee for it. So it's whether we want to be at the front or we want to wait, and then when we wait, we're going to cost us. So it's not nothing new. It's, are you ready to take the initiative and move forward with it?
Okay, thanks, gents. John, I have a note here from John that video that he wanted to share a little earlier, he now has. So I'm going to invite John to share the video. But before going there, I just want to pull a couple of points that came in. So here's one that with blockchain, you can have NFTs for those who are not familiar. And this is interesting. NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens.
Yes.
I mentioned this early on because in my photography and artistic creations, I am actually looking at something right now that will entail NFTs. And I'm really looking to do it as a way to introduce it into our Saint Lucian awareness. And the point is made here where NFTs can protect artists and artisans for their works. And just to expand on this, it goes so much deeper than just protecting the artist. Because one of the things that's happening in the realm of NFTs, and NFTs are actually built on blockchain. So now one can create a piece of work. It could be art, as in a drawing, a rendering. It can be music, and basically now, because this is sold through blockchain. Let me take, for example, a picture. I produce a picture and I put it online. Anyone can copy that picture and that picture shows up anywhere and I get no remuneration for it. Now using blockchain, if I tie an image of mine into the blockchain, suddenly that specific image has a unique identifier to it. And while one can make countless copies, those copies can have no value to them because they're not linked to the blockchain. And even now, where the technology is going, or in fact, where the technology is at, one can write smart contracts. And in that smart contract, one of the popular things that exists right now is to include a percentage remuneration. So that every time, again, let me take the example of an image. I sell a picture to someone, I get $100 for it. Now, that picture gains visibility, awareness, notoriety, whatever it is, the value of it increases. Somebody sells it for $200. Somebody else who bought it now sells it. It gets up to $1,000, let's just say. I can write into the smart contract that every time that picture sells, I will get a percentage of the sale. So this is residuals, just like happens in the music industry, where through ECHO, our East Caribbean system that allows for the recording of the use of music. So music that's played on the radio, for instance, and coming out of that, artists, the musicians, get a payment. Similarly now, using blockchain, it can be set up that creators of art, like I am in photography, and like persons who would do digital renderings, now it can be registered and you can also get residual income every time your image changes hands.
Correct.
So sharing that there, pulling up another point that was raised, I think that one of the ways to effect this change, that is with blockchain, is to launch a few apps on this secure platform so that the ordinary person can immediately see the benefits. And while this is true, and thanks so much for this contribution, the challenge becomes as well, one, financing it. And this is where generally one wants government to get involved, to be aware of the potential and also of what we're losing by not getting on board. And then as a consequence, being the central agency that coordinates a lot of this movement, because we're going to need regulation for stuff to have broader acceptance. So, and while we can start out without that, and maybe that's where we have to go, but generally we are going to be looking for that. We need to have that broader buy-in. So with those couple of points that I have made, let me just pause and invite John to share the video. And let me also note, oh my God, we've gone to about 10 minutes after the hour, which means that we've got about 20 minutes left. And as always, where does the time go? But with that said, John, let me invite you to share that video that you've been wanting to share for a little bit now. So all yours.
And I think increasingly you're going to see governments, central banks, monetary authorities stepping in to regulate these entities, these cryptos. And once you begin to do that, many of them will not be able to stand scrutiny. Mm-hmm. Having said all of that, a couple may very well survive because the technology on which many of them operate, blockchain, I believe is here to stay. So I want to make a distinction between cryptos, cryptocurrencies, and the blockchain. People confuse Bitcoin and blockchain. They're two different things. Bitcoin is the currency, blockchain is the road, the highway on which you put whatever currency, whatever you call it, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, they are all on a particular highway, in this case, blockchain. So I think blockchain is here to stay, but I do not believe many of these cryptos will survive. Having said all of that, ask yourself the following questions. If you still want to do it, because I know some of you want to do it, some of you are doing it right now. I have people in my own.
I'm going to stop there. The point I wanted to play this because this is the, if your audience does not know who Timothy Antoine is by now, he's the governor for Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And this was his take. And so I wanted to share that because when we always think about, well, this is new, we don't know about it, blah, blah, blah. Well, at the end of the day, if our central bank endorses blockchain, at what point do we now realize that as individual citizens, notwithstanding gatekeepers, that we can advocate for that? Because it is to our benefit, right? It is in line with our central bank, and as such, it should be in line with every government and every entity throughout the region. Does that not make sense, right? And so therefore, that's why we want to move in that conversation. The key thing, though, is based on your comment that you made earlier, I think one of the things we have to do is do some research of our own and really just type in blockchain and whatever industry that you're in, right? And then you can start to develop your own sort of vocabulary around how the blockchain can impact in a positive way those sectors. We talked about healthcare. We have, you mentioned earlier about tourism. We are pushing this whole village tourism concept where we are inviting our guests to interact with our merchants throughout the islands. Just imagine if anybody come to Saint Lucia had a secure application built on the blockchain whereby they don't have to be concerned about currency conversions and all that sort of thing. They will scan for the product that you're selling them, right? The price is going to come up in their, and this probably don't publish that too far, but anyway, the price is going to come up in their currency, which is going to be less than, and chances are they're going to buy more. Right. So if we're going to use psychology as far as how do we maximize our village tourism, here it is that we can use technology to help facilitate that and encourage more commerce throughout our island as opposed to just one place and staying in all exclusive locations. So it has multiple applications. And as the governor spoke to, there is the fact that, it's going to be around for a while. I want to show one more, if you would indulge me. I know the time is really, really sharp here, but let me share this with you, what this would look like on a regional level.
Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm here to tell you all about Vicus, the Vendit Interconnected Credit Union System. Vicus is a comprehensive software solution to connect all operational aspects within and between the OECS credit unions. With today's current system, each island has its own individual credit unions. Some credit unions have ATMs. Some offer online banking. And some credit unions have only one branch location, while others have more. But each credit union can only connect to its own systems, with no coherent link between softwares and other systems. This can be a major problem for some members of the credit union. Let's say that you're visiting another island and you need to access your funds immediately. This means that if you want to use an ATM, you are limited to only using those that are provided by your specific credit union. Vicus is here to solve the problem of interconnectability. Each credit union connected to Vicus will enjoy the benefits of providing its members with easy and convenient access to more ATM locations, along with the financial tools such as online banking and mobile applications. Members of credit unions connected to Vicus will be able to use any ATM belonging to any credit unions within the Vicus ecosystem. With Vicus, you will have access to all aspects of online banking right on your smartphone. You can do things like check your balance, move your money from one account to another, and receive or transfer funds to and from other members, all with near instant verification. This is what it means to be within the Vicus ecosystem. Vicus is a financial technology company that at its core is a clearinghouse system for payments, transactions, and settlements between credit unions. Any critical part of a credit union system that is vital for Vicus operations will be the responsibility of Vicus. This includes, but are not limited to, maintaining and resolving any issues that may emerge, including any issues with third-party software that is used and may be required. Vicus will serve as the innovative and technological arm to all connected credit unions. It functions as a clearinghouse and fintech company for the credit unions and owned by the credit unions. Thus,
I want to stop on that sentence, owned by the credit unions. And that's the difference there in everything else, everything that we're talking about. And that is the ownership component of it. Currently, we're using other people's technology and we're paying for it. Okay, you mentioned, Zephrin talked about the fact that the banks are multi-million dollars, but it's sitting, the credit unions, but it's sitting in the bank. As opposed to having access to our resources so we can create opportunities within our individual communities as it is supposed to have been designed to do. So the ownership is important. And something that we have not talked about and kind of alluded to it in terms of the healthcare part, and that is data security. That's something that is unfortunately very lacking in our region, and we don't understand how ripe we are and how what an aggressive level of interest is being placed in rummaging gathering our data. And so we have to be very, very careful in terms of what system we share that with. If we own the system, then there's very low chance of it leaking, because chances are you're not going to just, your institution is not going to give up your information. Fair enough. Similarly, with the credit reporting agency, we introduced back in the day, the credit unions also can own a credit reporting agency because they have data on the most people in the country. So why on earth, if you have such a huge data bank, would you now surrender that to an outside entity? So we have to sort of have a little bit of critical thinking along the choices and decisions that we make and how it's going to impact us long-term within this space. And that requires us to become more knowledgeable about the technology and the space that we're working in.
Okay, thanks, John. And I just want to pull a couple of other points that are coming along. So unfortunately, everything costs more in Saint Lucia, like for instance, these so-called e-passports. And I think that the e-passports are real, but maybe the so-called is the other things surrounding it. Blockchain can also help NGOs with fundraising, absolutely. And there's a question, register the NF, and I think that should be an NFT image where? So it really would be registered on the blockchain. And what I would invite folks to do is, again, just like John said, just look up blockchain technology. And I often say to folks, check out YouTube, you know, because there's so many lovely explanations, you don't even have to go through the reading. You can, and very quickly you start to see who is standing out in the space, because you will find them on different panels speaking about the same stuff. So that's some way that we can learn some more about NFTs and about blockchain technology in general. Another comment coming in. Thank you to the esteemed panelists for your excellent presentations. So happy to know that this has been insightful. Here's a great comment coming in. It will be a real game changer when credit union interconnectivity is a daily reality. Vicus deserves a little bit more study. And again, Dawn is sharing links. Coming out of Trinidad, this is Newsday Trinidad, cyber attack cripples Massey stores, flows forces closure at 23 supermarkets. So something that comes to mind here now is how do we secure ourselves? Would this be security? Would security be coming through blockchain? And I'm just asking this question rhetorically. Or does it speak to the importance of having robust security systems in this digital realm in which we live? And while this is messy at the big level, there's nothing that stops a cyber attack at our individual levels. One can come in and find your computer shut down, or somebody is sending you a note and asking for money, you know, ransomware, for stuff either real or imagined that's on your computer. So just stuff again for us to think about. So I'm really, really happy for that link that Donna shared. Yes, sorry, go on, John.
Let me just speak to that. You know, it's true. Cybersecurity is an issue. It's an issue all across the board. But I want to kind of get the lingo down, right? So if a blockchain is in fact immutable, and if a blockchain is in fact only accessed by those who have permission, you will see why it would take somebody a bit of time to try to hack it. If you see what I'm saying? So the reality is that unless you give your key to somebody, or you misplace your key, or you have your key exposed on a tablet or a laptop or a phone that's not secured, then yes, you're going to be at risk, right? And of course, the permission granted component of the blockchain makes it so that it's not, you know, out there where, you know, anybody in the organization can access it. Again, and of course, that's looking at blockchain within the financial services sector. So that's where I'm thinking from. So from that vantage point, it's important to know that, right? When your information is in there, you can rest assured that your information is secure. If a service provider, i.e. the one that you were talking about your artwork or the music, if say a young Saint Lucian decide to build a platform to host artists to sell their music overseas, they build their platform on the blockchain. That artist knows, because they have the key for it, it's secure, and any transaction that happened, they can see it. It's not going anywhere. So a blockchain is very transparent. You cannot hide it. So all this, when people talk about money laundering and all that kind of stuff, that's not a thing for the most part, because it's there, right? So, you know, you have to explain it as a bank or financial institution. If you move money from one place to the next and there's no reconciliation, the blockchain is going to flag that, and you're going to be in some hot water, I imagine.
I want to just also throw in a couple of other points, just as we're looking to wrap up. Coming back to finding out about blockchain and NFTs, one of the guys who comes to mind online, because he looks at it from commercial intent, is Gary V. So if one checks out Gary V, and so that's Gary and then VEE. Gary V on YouTube, and you put in blockchain, NFTs, anything along those lines, you'll find some interesting stuff. Gary shares that in a very short space of time, he can see us getting to the point where your whole life, by and large, is going to be in your wallet, in your digital wallet. Coming back to the point that John was making about being able to secure it, you have access. It's unique to you. And once you protect that access, no one can get into it. So when you hear the stuff, like for instance, you hear about millions or billions being hacked out of various entities that are hosting cryptocurrency. Generally, that's because there are loopholes in the system. But if you have got, let's just go, and I'm going to cryptocurrency here. If you've got crypto and you take it off and you store it in what's called a cold wallet, so it's not on the internet, you are absolutely protected. But again, this is getting a bit deeper into it, and it comes back to the point that has been raised earlier, the need for information, for knowledge, for us to start to educate ourselves, because this really is the way of the future, but it is a future that is with us right now. And while the world is moving at the speed of life, we are just puttering along and really getting left behind. Just very quickly, I'm going to run through a couple more comments that have come in, and then I'm going to turn it back over to panelists just for parting words. So here's a comment that has come in that's a really big deal. VICUS sounds like what's needed in the Caribbean. Also, data sharing is a major taboo within our region. For these financial technology to be trustworthy, they have to address that concern/taboo. So I hope I've spoken a little bit to that. And again, I'm inviting folks to just take some time coming out of this to just research, blockchain technology. For sure, I did not know about VICUS. Okay, so very interesting what's coming back here. That seems to have had the most uptick, seems to have had the most resonance with folks who are on. Privacy issues and a plus for transparency issues. How do we get more information on VICUS? Again, wow, yeah, coming back. Indeed, with blockchain, a hacker has to hack all the nodes to be successful. Good luck with that, hacker. Blockchain is truly the future. Once again, Dawn has come up and shared, link to Gary V, blockchain and Bitcoin. Not a question, but this has been very informative for me. I will certainly do some more reading about the technology. So folks, I am very happy with what we've come away with today. I really had hoped for more feedback in terms of things that we can do to move the bar forward. And if for a moment I'm sounding like I'm pushing this, I am, yes, and I want to assure everyone there is actually nothing in this for me. And if I were to speak to my ulterior motive, I would say that it comes back to where I started out with this I Am Lucian program. All too often, I hear us complaining about things that we are unhappy with, problems in the system, etc. The complaints are of little value in terms of moving the needle forward if we are not going to speak to what we would like to see as the solutions. What do we propose as solutions? So my take has always been about how can I be part of the change, an enabler of the change that I would like to see? Because I have a bit of an awareness of the technology, because of my photography and challenges I've had, it is why I instantly saw the value in this and invited John, and by extension, Zeph, to come in and share thoughts and insights with us. And what I'm hoping is that it has sparked some curiosity in you. John, I believe, had spoken about having, wanting to share a survey. So John, I'm going to invite you to post that survey in the chat and even in the Q&A as well. And then folks just go in, give some responses to that, because it will help to inform some of the moves going forward. So let me invite in, John has been speaking for a bit, so let me invite in Zeph to give some thoughts on some of what we looked at today, and also to give some parting words, some closing words, and then I will invite the same of John as well. So Zeph, all yours.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. Kurt, I think the exercise we had today, actually when I spoke with you and John, I believe, as we say, we are Lucians, we need to find things that will be beneficial to our country. Like you, we need to look at the financial benefit for ourselves because we are independent, but we believe it can have an impact on our country. And fintech is not something new. It is out there. It's just that a lot of people who do not understand it is not embracing it. I'm happy you said they can go on YouTube. Now it's true, YouTube have good and it has bad, But fintech is right there to provide you with a background if you don't have the knowledge. But again, I think what we need to emphasize here is that it takes a small group of individuals who understand the mechanics of what is involved to embrace it and now provide it to the general populace or make it available. And as I mentioned to you before, a small group, 8-10 people can move a mountain if they start off the right way. Because what happens if you take out the thing underneath the mountain, it's going to crumble. If you start the mountain from the top, you have to figure out the amount of layers you have to take out. So it's the foundation. So I think this exercise today, though John and myself have this knowledge internally, we believe that it needs to be out there so that people can understand. And using the credit union as a vehicle shows that the wide cross-section, you don't need to go to the banks. Credit unions are in every community. Ancillary, Canaries, Soufrière, La Choiselle, Labrie, go all around the island, there's a credit union. So we have a base to reach the people. It's those in leadership have to understand the technology out there, how it benefits us, so that we can now go back to our members who are the populace and say, here is something that can work for agriculture, it can work for health, it can work for transportation. We're talking about a cashless thing for the bus system for the last couple of years, John. And that's a classic example. Even before there were the robberies and they were killing bus drivers, we were already talking about it. And it would have minimized the problem, because if you don't have cash, who's going to come and rob you? So I like the exercise today, because I think at the end of the day, your program is great, because the people with the knowledge need to pass it on to the general populace. And it's forums like that that will awaken. A few people hear this thing and they go to curiosity, then they go to ask questions. If they do not hear these things, there's no question. Most people in credit union do not know that there's a facility that can make them deal with a credit union in Dominica. Do not know that they have a facility that can help them do transaction in Trinidad. So until you created that program, which I was happy to, despite I'm 1 hour behind you, I'm all the way in Texas, but it was great. I'm happy to see John over the computer, not in person. But it tells us that as Saint Lucians, we have a national interest. We believe that our country can move forward. There are things that can happen that can make our people feel more confident and trust. My argument is, if the governor of ECCB see the merit in cryptocurrency and understand Bitcoin, it's there to stay. Some of these NFTs and other things will fall by the wayside, but that project and where we're heading is there to stay, because it's going to bring benefit to the average person. And why I love the new technology is that it does not marginalize the ordinary man, because the man with the money and sophistication have all the software he needs now to do transaction around the world. The person who does not have that tool is the ordinary man, the poor man, the people me and you know, who wants that tool, because otherwise we will be kept behind. So let's embrace it, and thanks, Kurt, for allowing us that forum to have that dialogue. And I hope some of your people who tune in will now say, well, let me go and ask the people who are supposed to be making the decisions, what are you all doing for this thing to come to St. Lucia so we can have it going?
Thanks a lot, Zeph. Great insights and great closing. John, now you're left with the challenge of bettering that. Equaling or topping that. But all good, all good.
I was just going to say what he said.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll start off where I started off earlier, and that is, the understanding of my role as a Saint Lucian. And it did not end when I traveled on, I'm aging myself here, on BWIA to New York, okay? And it continues to this day. And it's incumbent upon me, because my national anthem says so, that I ought to love the land that gave me birth. And as part of my understanding of love is to give back, to be a supportive of, to encourage, and to want the best for those of whom I love and the places of which I love. And in this case, it's my country of St. Lucia. So it is, I'm unapologetically a St. Lucian, because the flag everywhere, in every office that I am inhabiting. But to the point of this discussion, you know, a group of us have been at this for years now. And you're right, we ought to pose the question to individuals who are in leadership, who are in the credit union movement, who are in the league, and asking, why haven't we moved forward on this before? And it's a challenge. And it's not like I shared with you at the top, is I'm going to call people out because the time is at critical point now. Our young people are dying. Right. And when some folks may think it's not happening in their neighborhood, but that's unfair to even have that mindset because we are all in the same neighborhood. We live on a 238 square mile rock. Okay, so we're not going anywhere. So it's going to affect us all. And we ought to come with the same conciliatory motion that we came to do the march in view for to address crime. We should have that same mindset in addressing development. Because we know one of the elements that is a preventer to crime is development, is opportunity. And repeatedly on every program that comes across the television, we talk about lack of opportunity. And the lack of opportunity is not because opportunity does not exist, is our choices and decisions as to how we approach opportunity and how and for whom. Another question, right? And so my encouragement to our audience is to look into this. I will provide information regarding VICUS to you. I'll have my email address there to send to write to me, and we can continue the dialogue. You know, I know sometimes my words may come out a bit, sharp, but it's important to know the critical state that we're in right now. And so I'm going to take a departure and take you here. Look up also austerity and what that means. Okay, our country right now is north of 60% in debt to GDP. All right, we may record an X percentage of economic growth, but think about where we came from as far as our losses. First thing. So let's have honest conversations as far as our individual role in our country's development. And so understanding what austerity means, look that up. And also while you're looking that up, you'll find some articles about the countries who have experienced austerity and look at what their economic situation was like before they entered into austerity, what their policies were like before they entered into austerity. So for those of us who live overseas and can see the big picture, we are in panic mode because we see policies and decisions being made that can have a negative impact on our country. But the good news is that we're Saint Lucians and we never go down without a fight. The reality is that what's very evident to us is that during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, it was Saint Lucians who supported Saint Lucians, so our country continued to survive. And we should hold on to that fact. No matter what anybody says, when we work together as Saint Lucians, we make things happen, period. Nobody can do it better than us, right? We had a young man who built a PC recently for featured everyday people without training. That's the kind of person we are. We celebrate our Auntie Dwayne recently. She did not just see a problem and decide to ask, well, nobody has ever emancipated before. No, she took the bull by the horn, put her life at risk so that way we can sit here today and enjoy the celebration of what we call emancipation. But it doesn't stop. Each and every one of us has a responsibility, and it is up to you as on this platform to share with your other people in your family and your friends as how we can move our country forward. And we're here. The diaspora, well, Saint Lucians living overseas is here. And we've always been here. We've been clamoring at your government, last one, this one, and we will keep clamoring at them until they realize that the country needs, well, its people more than anything else. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I just want to close with this thought that came to mind. Zeph, you spoke to the cashless system for payments on the buses, and it pains me because it is a simple system to institute. And since the talk of it first came up, people have died where that didn't have to happen. If we think of robberies on buses, if we think of the uncomfortableness of people on buses, sometimes at night, etc. So, you know, it brings to mind this idea of how many more will have to suffer, how many more will have to die. And again, the solutions are before us. The solutions are simple. But for some reason, we appear to lack the will as a people and maybe as government as well to effect the change that's required. And I think that it's important for us as Lucians who care, for us to really say, not just enough is enough, but literally Nou pa pwe anko. So with that said, I just want to thank everyone for being on this evening. Bid you a great rest of your evening. Thanks for your participation, and looking forward to us continuing this journey of being Lucian, the essence of being Lucian, and how we can harness that to be the very best that we can possibly be. With that, I thank you and have a good evening, everyone.